Should be a little happy. The sun's shining in Canton, Ohio one more time. At this time, we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the 2014 City of Canton State of the City Address. Color Guard, please come forward.
Honor guard, halt!
Honor guard, right, wait! Both colors.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor guard, order, left, right, forward.
You may all be seated. There's some additional seats in the back for those of you who are standing. At this time, I'd like to officially welcome you once again to the 2014 City of Canton State of the Union Address. Before I begin the introduction of the Honorable Mayor Healy, I'd like to introduce a few dignitaries that we have in the audience. I'll ask you to please stand and remain standing for a round of applause. New to our community, the new CEO of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, C. David Baker. His mentor and protege, Steve Perry. Steve Warner. the Civil Service Commission. David Kaminsky, Canton Regional Chamber of Commerce. Joe Novak, All Care. Jim Harris, All Care. Dr. David King, Malone University. My good friend Steve Katz, Canton Regional Chamber of Commerce. Herman Healt, Executive Director, Stark Metro Housing Authority. If there are any other dignitaries in the audience that I did not call your name, please forgive me. You can see me afterwards, and I'll try to apologize to you. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the Honorable Mayor William Healy. Mayor William Healy was first elected in 2007 and is currently serving in his 7th year as mayor of Canton, Ohio. Before becoming mayor, he served 2 terms in the Ohio House of Representatives. Mayor Healy was also selected as a member of the Ohio delegation for the 2012 Presidential Democratic National Convention and was one of Ohio's electoral votes that re-elected President Barack Obama to the United States. Mayor Healy focuses most of his time creating new opportunities for economic development and job creation. A large part of his strategy depends upon cooperation between local governments in the region and an increased emphasis on the development of international trade. Mayor Healy is diligently working to keep jobs in Canton, as well as attract new jobs to this wonderful city. In addition to his economic concerns, Mayor Healy's priorities are making Canton safer, improving neighborhoods, and promoting quality education opportunities for every child in this community. Mayor Healy is committed to making Canton a city where people want to live, work, and raise their families. Mayor Healy earned his associate's degree from Kent State University Stark Campus, a bachelor's degree in marketing from Rowan University in New Jersey, an MBA degree in management from the NYU Stern School of Business in New York. Mayor Healy is currently president of the Ohio Municipal League, Board of Trustee member of the Kent State Stark Advisory Board, trustee of the Stark Development Board, president of the Canton Health Board, and serves on numerous other city, county, and civic organizations. Mayor William Healy is married to his lovely wife, Dee, and they have 1 son, the mighty Austin, who is now a sophomore in high school. Mayor Healy is the son of the late William J. Healy, a former Democratic city councilman and longtime state lawmaker in the Ohio House of Representatives. I'd like to introduce to you my friend, your mayor, the William J. Healy. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I like that. Welcome to the Canton Civic Center and the 2014 State of the City Address. I'd like to take a moment also to recognize a few people, but first the sponsor of this event, Denny Saunier, the Canton Chamber of Commerce. Is Denny here? Is Denny here? Denny's not here. Well, we got representatives from the Chamber here, Steve Katz. I want to thank you guys for many years in a row now. They sponsored the event and the refreshments outside, so I want to give them a round of applause for that. Thank you. I'd also like to take a moment to thank City Council for all their hard work. And I'd like to recognize all the members from City Council that are here, as well as all the other elected officials from the City of Canton and the county. So if you would stand or raise your hand for the elected officials so we can recognize you, please stand up. Thank you so much. Most importantly, I'd like to thank you. I have to turn this off. You guys hear me okay? Was it? Hold on a second. I got two mics going on here and it's creating a problem. Is this better? Yes. Okay. Most importantly, I'd like to thank the residents of Canton for your continued support and confidence in this administration over the past 6 years. Running the 8th largest city in Ohio is not easy. But with the dedication of hardworking employees, a very talented group of department heads, and our large population of community-minded individuals, we are moving Canton forward. But now it's time to raise the bar. We want to create a standard of excellence to provide the absolute best services in everything we do. And today, I challenge every employee in every department to not only excel, but to raise the bar beyond current best practices and set new standards. If we really want to claim ourselves as the Hall of Fame city, then we should be performing everything we do at Hall of Fame levels. So how do we get our city to perform at Hall of Fame levels? Well, the answer is the same way that any business with the goal of being a world-class organization would do it. First, we start with management. We must build a leadership team of the most qualified, experienced, progressive professionals and give them the resources they need to create a standard of excellence. And that's exactly what we've been doing. As mayor, I directly or indirectly oversee 22 of the city's 32 different departments, not counting those under specific boards or commissions or other elected officials, like the auditor or treasurer, law director, judges or council. And since I've been mayor, I've made it a priority to find the most qualified, experienced professionals I can to lead every one of those 22 departments. And today, I'm proud to say that we have the most talented management team the city has ever experienced. And because of these individuals, we are reaching best practices in many departments and have already reached a standard of excellence in others. Today, I'm going to introduce those folks to you. I'd like to first recognize my cabinet and staff. And my cabinet and staff are up here. Would you please stand up for me? My cabinet. It all starts here. And I can tell you, without any doubt in my mind, this is the strongest group of folks I've had in the cabinet since I've been mayor. And I'm so proud of these guys. They're doing amazing things. For the department heads, I broke them up into a couple different groups. The first group I'm showing you here is from the Department of Public Safety. We have our police and fire chiefs, as well as health department and building code and a few others. These guys are incredibly talented, and they're with us today. And if you notice when you came in, these photos that I'm showing you here, they're on boards up front, and they give a little bio of each of these members. And I think it's really important you see this because, again, the qualifications of talent that this group has is really, really strong, and we're seeing those results in these departments, and I'll touch on that more later. In our Department of Public Service, we have another group of leaders that are just fantastic, and again, you'll be hearing more about these folks. Internal services, like HR and IT, and Pat Barton. Where's Pat Barton? Pat's in the back there, very instrumental in helping us get this set up today, but he's done amazing things. Let's hear it for Pat Barton. Another area I'd like to point out real quick is the Department of Purchasing. Where's our purchasing guys at? They're in the back there. Purchasing. These two guys back here, stand up, John. Randy Ducar, John Hyman. Now, you guys wouldn't know this because it's an internal function. But since we paired those two up and put them in that department, we have seen amazing changes in the internal operations of our city that are just wowing every single department head and everybody that's affected by it. And I want to thank you guys personally because you made a huge impact, and I know you're just beginning. So thank you for what you're doing. Our development team is also strong, and you've seen a lot of success stories that we've had over things happening in our development team. And I'm going to point out, too, Bethany Chamberlain and Lisa Miller. I'm going to reference them a little bit later, too, because they helped us get some stuff that's going to be great. And I'll bring them up in a few minutes when I get later in speech. But again, we've just got some unbelievable talented folks going on here. But that's really what I want to start with in reference to creating a standard of excellence. We really need to start with the people that are leading the way, both the cabinet and department heads. And I really feel today that we've got an incredibly strong team, and we are poised to make wonderful things happen. But in addition to having a strong management team, you also have to have financial strength and stability. And so I'm going to take a few extra moments during this speech this year to talk about our finances. Because as you know, we've had a lot of conversations about the city and the economic conditions from the recession and cuts from the state government, and a lot of difficulties we've had with challenging ourselves to find enough money to hire police and firemen and a few other things. So I want to show you today, as we've come out of this recession, exactly where we are. Like any business, we're only as healthy as our overall finances, and the city's no different. I'm happy to share with you today that the City of Canton is currently experiencing our strongest financial position in over a decade. Let me repeat that. Canton is experiencing our strongest financial position in over a decade. What, no applause for that? Come on. Right? So let me give you some examples. But before I do, please don't make any mistakes that I'm insinuating that we're rolling in cash, because we're not. I'm saying that our overall finances are stronger than ever. But you need to look at the entire picture of our finances to really understand this, because the city is more than just the cash flow or the general fund. We actually have an entire operations of over $200 million. The City of Canton is a $200 million business with 32 departments and 900 employees. It's a very sophisticated operation that is divided among many different categories. Each of these different pie charts, pieces of pie here, show a different stream of revenue. And the one thing you need to understand when you're looking at Canton city finances or government finances is each of these revenue streams are a different pot of money, and they typically cannot be used for anything else. So while you'll hear us talking about having enough money to do one thing, you may be saying, well, gee, why aren't they using that money to do something else? And the answer is because you can't commingle these funds. So we have to be financially strong in all of these funds in order to be able to do all the things that we want to do. And I'm going to explain a few of these right here as we follow along. The first piece of the pie I want to talk about, which is the biggest single part of our overall budget, is that red little box there, which is the general fund. And this is the one we talk about more than anything else. This shows you our track record on the general fund. Back in 2007, which was our high, in 2007, we had $55.5 million. And in 2013, this past year, we're at $52 million. And you can see here that it kind of went down, and then it rebounded a little bit, and then come down a little bit. So how is this possible that I'm telling you we have the strongest financial situation, but yet you're seeing this 2013 number drop a little bit? Well, let me explain it to you, because this is a combination of a few things. Our projections for 2014 are that we're going to see a number very similar to 2013. So we're not anticipating a drop next year, but we're also not expecting a very, very big increase. But I'll get into a little more detail to explain why that is. Income tax is the largest portion of the general fund. In fact, it's about 65% of the general fund. You can see over here, am I in your way? So if you look at this, this really reflects the path of the recession. Our all-time high income tax collection was in 2007 at over $32.5 million. And then from that point forward, we dropped down. In 2010, our income tax bottomed out. In 2011, we started to see a local recovery, which increased our income tax. In 2012, and in 2013, this past year, we hit $33.7 million in income tax collection. Let me point out, that is the most income tax dollars the city has ever collected in any single year. 2013 was our all-time high ever. So our economy is recovering here in Canton because that directly reflects our economy. We're projecting again this to be very similar in 2014, although we might be a little bit higher. Kim Perez, our new treasurer, thank you. Our new treasurer and his team has implemented a couple new ideas on investing to try to get a bigger return on our investments, as well as going after unclaimed debt, unpaid taxes. They're going to aggressively go after that. And if they're successful, we should see this number to rise slightly. But in all, it's going to be about the same or slightly a little bit more in reference to income tax collections. And there's a number of variables that help us project that, but still we're talking about the city's all-time high income tax collections for a couple of years running here. The second largest fund, or portion that goes into the general fund besides income tax, is the state support. You always hear us talking about the local government fund from the state, or the state funding programs, and we've been talking about how they've been cutting our funding. This shows you very detailed. In 2008, we were at nearly $11 million in support from our state. And each year this has declined. We're projecting this to go down to $4.7 million, over a $6 million reduction in support from our state. This is local government fund, the inheritance tax, tangible personal property tax, or business tax. That's what's happened to our community and every community throughout the state in reference to the support from the state of Ohio. So while they balance their budgets on our backs, we've taken the hit and we've had to address this. But that gets added to the income tax. In addition to that, we have carryover funds. Now, you know, we've talked about at the end of the year, you have money left over and that gets moved over into the following year's budget account. And we were strong back in 2007 on our carryover. A big portion of that carryover, right? Where'd it go? There it is. Our carryover fund. This year, one of the reasons that you need to have a strong carryover is because it addresses your cash flow on January 1st, January 2nd, and so on, because you haven't started collecting taxes for that new year. In every 12 years, you have a 27th pay period because you're making a payroll check that typically falls on the 1st or 2nd of the year, which means this money really is money you collected in December that's being paid that first payroll check. So on January 2nd this year, $1.5 million was taken out of this account to pay the payroll. That's what this is for, so you have cash flow. But you can see when the recession kicked in, this number dropped down in 2008 and 2009. It bottomed out till we had barely anything left. But since then, even though our revenues and our state funding have been stressed, we've been able to increase the carryover amount literally every year since then. And at the end of last year, 2013, we had over $4 million in our carryover account, or more than we've had in our reserves for over a decade. This is a strong indicator, and this money gets rolled into the next year's budget to help us pay for the future. So when you add this to the local government fund reductions, to the income tax drops, and also the increase, what you're going to get is you're going to see this general fund number. This is what we're actually operating off of. In 2008, it was $57 million, and it dropped and dropped and dropped, and it's starting to recover. In our projections for 2014, you're going to see the bigger increase. So now you're seeing the bottoming out and the start to rise here in reference to the combined general fund in reference to our cash flow. Let me remind you, this is the fund that pays for our policemen and our firemen, along with all other general obligations. So when we were enforced to have to reduce our employees, police and fire were directly impacted by this. Now look how well we're doing here as this is starting to recover. Imagine if we had this number and we added $6 million from the state that they didn't take away from us. We'd be at all-time highs right now. Imagine what that $6 million could do for us today. That was the general fund, and that was this piece here. The next biggest piece of the pie in reference to our overall operations are going to be our enterprise funds, or our public works, water, sewer, and sanitation. Collectively, this represents about $37 million of that budget I referenced, of the $200 million. This is a big, big operations, and each of these are 3 individual businesses, but we oversee all of them. One of the things that we need to do when we have these infrastructure organizations is we have to make sure that we continue to reinvest in these infrastructures. We have to make sure that we have garbage trucks that don't break down. We buy new ones in bins. We have to make sure that the sewer system works, and the water pumps and the valves motors all work so that you get your water and it filters it, and that we have a wastewater treatment facility that cleans your water and reclamates it back into society. In this past 6 years, in my first 6 years here, we have reinvested nearly $50 million in our infrastructure of these public works programs. Think about that. $50 million put back into these companies to make sure that they're working properly and they're upgraded and they're modernized and they're providing you the services you expect. And we have plans to invest $100 million more over the next couple of years, particularly with the wastewater treatment facility that's coming online. So you're talking about $150 million worth of reinvestment in our public utilities, which are so important to you. We don't really talk about it much, but you know when you turn on your water or you flush your toilet that it matters. The reserve funds, or the carryover amounts that we have in our enterprise funds, again, we're typically in the $8 to $10 million range, and these have steadily been on the increase over the past 6 years. And we went from a little over $8 million to $22 million in our reserves. This is the money that's used to make sure these operations are running properly, to make sure that we have the money to do those projects that come up, and make sure that we have the absolute best water and sewer systems available to you. Now keep in mind, while we were investing nearly $50 million to upgrade them, we also were increasing our reserves. And I mentioned earlier, we were increasing our general fund cash flow carryovers. And, you know, as you look at these, income tax is starting to go up. When you put all these together, we're going to get that big picture here. But there is one other factor in here. And the last factor that I'm going to point out in reference to determining your overall financial outlook is your overall debt and your ability to pay that debt. And back in 2006, we had nearly $60 million of outstanding debt between all of our different companies and organizations under the city. And we've been able to reduce that during the same period of time by another roughly $8 million. So we've reduced our debt, we've increased our reserves, our cash flow in reference to the income tax collection is growing, and when you put all this together, we have the strongest financial situation that we've had in over a decade. And that's great news, because that means we're going to be able to do more and more of the things that you want us to do, because we're going to be financially strong enough to do so. So I think that's great news for the city of Canton. And we've struggled through the recession, but we are now in a position to start moving our city forward and building that standard of excellence that you deserve. In fact, we feel so strongly about our financial situation that, working closely with the city auditor, Ari Mallon, and his chief deputy, Gary Young, we're going to invite Moody's and Standard & Poor's here to the city of Canton here in the near future to ask them to reevaluate our financial outlook, and with the intent to help increase our bond rating. We believe we are poised for an increase in our bond rating, and we're going to seek out for that review to have that done. Because we're in a position that we've got new projects that we want to work on, and we want to make sure that we can get those projects done with the lowest cost of money and the lowest interest rate to make it happen. Again, looking out for the best interests of our city. So again, I don't know how many cities that are asking these folks to come around this time of year with everything that's going on. More cities are having trouble than not. But we're feeling so confident right now that this is the direction we're going with our financial situation. So when I tell you it's the strongest we've been in decades, I believe it, our auditors believe it, and we're going to ask these guys to come in and prove it to you.